This is the first Asia-Pacific Roundtable I have the honor to attend. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to join you for 2 days of inspiring discussions about a security landscape in this fascinating and vibrant part of the world. And it started very well last night and this morning. As Prof. Faiz highlighted yesterday, this particular APR is closely linked to Malaysia's ASEAN Chairmanship 225. So in preparing today's address, I looked at the conference proceedings of the 29th APR, which took place exactly 10 years ago during Malaysia's last ASEAN Chairmanship. What struck me most was how many of the challenges described in 215 are still on top of today's agenda with ever more urgency. For example, the report from 215 describes hedging behavior in an environment of rising competition and strategic uncertainty. It analyzes the repercussions of the shift of the global economic center to the Asia-Pacific, speaks about an increasingly multipolar world. It warned about challenges in the South China Sea and speaks, I quote, about a shift from cooperation towards a zero-sum, winner-takes-all attitude by large powers. It mentioned new cyber threats, competition over natural resources, including water, and it even refers to trade becoming another arena for major power rivalry. Sounds familiar? I thought so. And quite a few of the visionary speakers from 215 are actually in this ballroom today, right now. And I want to acknowledge their analytical capacity to see so many of today's challenges coming. I wish you had been wrong. At the same time, I believe that most of us were surprised about the rapid pace with which the world is changing. We have heard many pertinent analyses this morning, and indeed the question is, how do we respond? How do we act? Since politics ultimately is about what we do. The concrete steps we take to make the world a better place for our people and our citizens to live in. The European Commission recently asked former Finnish President Sauli Niinistö to take stock of today's challenges and propose a roadmap of what needs to be done. Allow me to read a paragraph from his findings. Since the starting of the quote, since the start of this decade, the EU has experienced the most severe pandemic in a century, the bloodiest war on European soil since the Second World War, the hottest year in recorded history. The COVID-19 pandemic was a crisis of a nature and magnitude for which all member states and the EU as a whole were insufficiently prepared. Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine showed that it takes two to maintain peace, but only one to start a war. Moreover, the increasing damage caused by the extreme weather events is forcing Europeans to ask not only how climate change will affect future generations, but also what we need to prepare for today. And Niinistö continues, these deeply disruptive events are neither transitory nor isolated. They are driven and connected by underlying fault lines, long-term shifts, and root causes that point to a prolonged period of high risk and deep uncertainty. We need to awaken to a new unstable reality, and there is no reason, unfortunately, to expect that the underlying driving forces will dissipate in the foreseeable future. Now, true, Sauli Niinistö was tasked to look at things from an EU perspective. At the same time, if you look at the key vectors he highlights, the COVID-19 pandemic, Russia's unprovoked and illegal war in Ukraine, including its harmful impact on energy, food security, international law, as we heard this morning, as well as climate change and their impact of these vectors, they are all strongly felt across the globe and still is. We would all be well advised to draw our lessons from these experiences with regard to securing supply chains, addressing the root causes of climate change and preparing for its consequences, ensuring food security or avoiding dependencies on specific partners, whether with respect to energy, critical raw materials, or security. The above vectors are not the only ones. This forum already 10 years ago singled out a few further ones, cybersecurity, hybrid threats. Not going to dive into details. I think this morning we've heard a brilliant summary of what shakes the very foundations of the world order, in particular since a few months, but which started a few years ago. I do think I can highlight two of those, though. Climate change, because someone rightly mentioned this morning that this was only briefly addressed. And along artificial intelligence, I would consider these two the mothers of all challenges, maybe. In the case of climate change, certainly. In the case of artificial intelligence, potentially also providing solutions for the problems that we'll be facing. While we might have anticipated many of these challenges, the world in 2025 looks very different from what we had optimistically hoped for in 2015. We are all facing a new, a harsher reality. What have we done in response? Talking about the EU perspective here, we decided, in short, to, one, strengthen our resilience and economic security, two, reinforce our civilian and military preparedness, and three, to build sustainable partnerships with like-minded. We have seen in European history that every crisis can also be an opportunity. And indeed, the EU's response, I believe, this time is different than 10 years ago. It is more ambitious, with a clear focus, and with substantial resources. And we decided to prioritize cooperation with partners wherever possible. On strengthening resilience and economic security, we have taken a number of measures, diversified supply chains, invested in digital and green technologies to enhance competitiveness, sustainability, and independence, increased the focus on strategic sectors such as semicon and critical raw materials, bolstered production, research capabilities. The list goes on. It's about implementing a series of policies, but also underpinning this with substantial funds and financial instruments such as the European Recovery and Resilience Facility. This is going to be the start of a long, hard walk, but a necessary one. And we are secondly reinforcing civilian and military security. Looking back, for decades, we focused on building trust rather than building a stronger military. Focus was disarmament. NATO established the NATO-Russia Council. There was even talks, intense talks, of Russia becoming a NATO member. That was the spirit. Europe cut defense spending, enjoying a peace dividend and investing in its people and economic prosperity instead, which was good. It worked as long as all sides shared the goal to preserve peace. But instead of enjoying the peace dividend, we were de facto running a security deficit. And Russia's invasion of Ukraine was a stark reminder that the peace consensus is gone and power competition is back. It started there and it happened elsewhere as well. Now, Europe, for its part, must now take greater responsibility for its own defense. Just mentioned three things. We'll raise defense spending despite financial constraints. We have the intention to act fast and decisively. And the European Commission has already proposed a plan to mobilize over $800 billion for defense. And it will also give our member states more flexibility to spend in that sector without violating EU fiscal rules. So it would bring the sum to beyond $1 trillion. Secondly, closer cooperation within the EU and with partners. It's not only about spending money, it's about how we spend the money. We must close critical capabilities gaps, also need to invest in advanced systems, cooperate with partners on this. Thirdly, we have to widen Europe's defense industrial base and create synergies to increase our defense production and meet the growing demand. We need large-scale collaborative projects that can pool resources, ensure interoperability, and reduce delivery times. We do have some of the world's most advanced defense companies, some temporarily neglected. Many innovative SMEs are pushing the boundaries of technology. Lastly, I would recall that we continue and will continue to solidify security, support, and guarantees for Ukraine. Now, regretfully, we were compelled to return to the principle that led my parents' generation safely through the Cold War and prevented it from turning hot. The guiding principle is, again, deterrence, peace through strength, as we have heard this morning. That's why we're now mobilizing higher resources. We already have increased by 30% in the last 2 years, and we're going further. I stress two things, not out of choice, certainly not out of choice, but out of necessity. And also, secondly, not to threaten anyone, but to deter any attacks against a united Europe. Let me stress again in different words. Our overarching goal has not changed. We want to preserve peace in Europe and where we can contribute to elsewhere as well. This is what the EU was designed for in its very origins. But since the road ahead has become significantly more bumpy, the environment more hostile, we must reinforce the vehicle. Not to threaten anyone, but to deter any attacks. Now I come to the point that maybe is closest to my heart, and that is to build and seek partnerships that are built on trust and mutual respect for each other's interests. They can vary. Probably all countries in the region would place the protection of their sovereignty and their territorial integrity at the top of their priority list. With many, another focus will be trade and investments. Others will see the need to cooperate on research and education. For a few in the room, I believe climate change might be the chief concern, as the very existence of their countries will depend on the measures that we all will be jointly taking to address the root causes. It's only natural that national interests vary, and we aim for tailor-made partnerships. This is how we want to engage. Hear our partners' interests and concerns, share our own expectations in return, frankly, in an honest and transparent manner. On that basis, jointly identify areas of common ground wherever possible, or find mutually acceptable and beneficial compromises. Now, two areas. Security partnerships can take different forms, from broader security and defense partnerships to dialogue formats. They can cover different areas, and we're ready to cooperate, collaborate on maritime security, counter-terrorism, cross-border crime, the prevention of natural disasters, countering hybrid threats, or possibly even on joining our efforts to diversify military supply where needed and to access new capabilities. We can help each other deliver on our mutual security objectives. It's not about ours or yours, it's about our joint striving for peace. We can join forces where we have, or where you have, technology and the expertise. And this is not only about stability in our respective regions, it's also a key part in strengthening our economic security and ultimately our prosperity. Secondly, a word on trade, another dynamic fields where we, I believe, can all be stronger together. It was referred to this morning, free trade and upholding multilateral principles is what we will continue to do. In today's interconnected world, there is no such thing as far away. I believe, Stephen, I must have come across something you wrote or said earlier. Our economies are closely intertwined, in many ways interdependent. For decades, this has in principle worked very well. However, we have in recent years witnessed an increasing weaponization of dependencies in international trade relations. And as global geopolitics become more tense, economic relations are increasingly shaped by security considerations, not just efficiency and economic gains. We've seen this shift since the pandemic, worsened by tensions between the US and China, Russia's war on Ukraine, increasing economic coercion, other complicated developments. Some analysts even argue that the WTO model of free trade is outdated. In this new, more securitized world, we will adapt where necessary, I would respond, but continue supporting the rules-based trade order. For a simple reason, it's in our interest. Our regions, and I think we're very much alike in that respect, undergo significant economic and industrial transformations, and we share a strong interest to actively diversify our value chains. Trade is only one important element in that respect. Our FTAs and our green and digital partnerships go beyond economic interests. They aim at strengthening stability, security, and the multilateral system. And these are not mere slogans. A clear indicator of our joint commitment to delivering prosperity for the benefit of our respective peoples are the FTAs that the EU has negotiated here with partners in the wider region or is currently negotiating. And there is quite many. I will not name them all. I can't resist, as EU ambassador to Malaysia, though, to particularly welcome the negotiations for an EU-Malaysia FTA, with the first round starting in less than 2 weeks. I believe this and other FTAs can be a launchpad to strengthen cooperation in key sectors which will drive the global economy. From semiconductors to clean tech, from AI, we just had a summit in Paris. Soon Malaysia will host the ASEAN AI Summit, to high-performance computing and digital public infrastructure. By investing together in this tech and by building strong supply chains, we can create a real advantage for ourselves in today's competitive global economy. And we should draw on each other's skills and talents. This, of course, also applies to the broader region. We have seen positive developments, taking Vietnam or Singapore as examples where we have successfully FTAs in force, and this has hugely benefited both sides, including going beyond trade and fostering investments. We should also continue to deepen our connectivity links within our regions and between them. This forms part of our distinctive offer under the Global Gateway Initiative, launched in December 2021, to help build diversified and secure supply chains and to unlock sustainable investments in partner countries. Probably be fair to refer in this context to the ASEAN power grid, because it's very topical. Things are happening now. We in the EU have big experience in terms of having done something that has not been done in that form anywhere else in the world, and that is integrated national power grids. And national power grids are definitely more national than other grids, I can tell you. So it takes quite a bit of effort and courage, regulatory frameworks, and experience, so we are happy to share that. It will not apply all one-to-one, but some ideas might be helpful, including the technical know-how when it comes to undersea cables. Now, I'll close, and I've taken much time between the starter and the main course, but let me circle back to our event today in the Asia Pacific, because the region is crucial for us Europeans in many ways. In terms of population and dynamic economic growth, here is where the future of the planet will be shaped, for the better and hopefully not for the worse. The region is a key trading partner, both a destination and an important source of FDIs. Over 40% of world trade flows through the region and the Strait of Malacca. We share a strong interest in maritime security and safety, as well as unhindered access to international waterways. The region is, I truly believe that, a natural partner in many fields, including the green and digital transition. Our people are connected. And just like ASEAN and the wider Asia Pacific is a crucial region for the EU, I humbly believe that the EU can be considered an attractive and reliable partner. We seek partnerships based on choice, not dependency. As stated earlier, our overarching goal is to strengthen resilience, diversify supply chains, reduce dependencies, and preserve our sovereignty and independence. But naturally, we fully understand and support that our partners will want exactly the same, to preserve the freedom of choice, as we have heard this morning. A lesson learned that we gladly share in this context is to avoid being over-dependent on any of one's partners, however close they may seem at any time. We also do not demand exclusivity of our partnership. We want our friends to have a multitude of partners. We also don't expect anyone to blindly side with us or with any other partner for that matter. What we do ask, and also this was said this morning, I think in reference to a minister from Singapore, is to side with the fundamental principles underpinning our relations. And I'd add a second thing, to contribute, where possible, with concrete efforts to the solution of common challenges, in a way and level that corresponds to the respective means, abilities, and experience. It's about addressing challenges together, not only talking about them. Multilateralism and cooperation is in our DNA. The EU unites a group of mid-sized countries who initially convened as a peace project based on economic integration and then grew into a political entity. I think it's worthwhile reminding us that what we commonly refer to, or many refer to, sometimes surprisingly, as one of the power centers in the world, mostly for its economic clout, being a trade powerhouse, is ultimately a group of mid-sized countries. Sometimes said to colleagues that if Malaysia, a host country, would be a member of the EU, it would be the 6th biggest in terms of population size and the 11th biggest in terms of size of its economy. Now you can do the calculation for other countries here. They would all end up quite high on the list. So we are very similar in the sense that we're countries that need and that believe in predictable frameworks. We want to address global challenges together. 2 more points. We put, I believe, our resources where our words are. We provide tangible support, technical and financial. As suggested earlier today, statistics, in fact, speak for themselves. The EU and its member states, to take one example only, combined remain the biggest global provider of ODA. In 2023, nearly 96 billion euro, that is above 100 billion US dollars in 1 year alone. Spent, for example, to address root causes of climate change or to provide support and relief in crisis situations. Gaza, Syria, Ukraine, Myanmar, or elsewhere. And we also get involved with concrete support actions and put our political weight behind that. It's not always easy. It's at times also impossible to act for lack of unanimity for us. But it is not for lack of trying. Also, admittedly, the results are not always the ones we aim for, but it is still a significant engagement and dedication of resources that are also scarce for us. So I would welcome everyone who would basically want to join in with their concrete efforts, and we have had, it was mentioned this morning, we have wonderful examples of the initiatives taken here in the regions and where we can work together. Not least, we're also an attractive single market, an important partner for trade investments. I think that stands for itself. Now, we will stand with those who choose cooperation, shared prosperity and common security. That is the world we believe in, what we as Europe stand for. I'm also positive in looking at the region because I see a lot of reactions to the difficulties at the moment that point into the right directions. But the challenge will be big. We have to ensure that the small are not pushed around by the big, so that might makes not right. And we will stand with those who defend international humanitarian law. Ladies and gentlemen, as the High Representative of the EU, Kaja Kallas, who will soon come to Kuala Lumpur, recently said at the Shangri-La Dialogue, if you reject unilateralism, bullying, and aggression, and instead choose cooperation, shared prosperity, and common security, the EU will be always by your side. I wish the 38th Asia-Pacific Roundtable successful deliberations and look forward to the ideas and proposals on how to ensure the necessary amount of cooperation in an increasingly contested world. Many thanks for your attention and enjoy your lunch.